Hi everyone, welcome to this lesson on Mountains of Illinois in the version of Tommy Emmanuel. As always, only the first part will be released on YouTube. For full access, you can check out my new website or my Patreon page. They both offer different things at different prices, so there is something for everyone. If you want the tablature, then do check out the website, since you will get a discount on music notes if you order the tab through the link there. Regular viewers here on the channel might remember that I recently covered the same song in the version of Clive Carroll. And you can consider this tutorial as the next part in that series. Clive Carroll plays this tune with a traditional fingerstyle technique, just plain fingers, while Tommy prefers hybrid picking or pick and fingers. Apart from that, both versions are very similar, so I'm not going to repeat myself by going over each and every chord fingering again. If you need that information, then do go through the Clive Carroll lesson first. Comparing both versions will hopefully give you a better view on the difference between fingerstyle and hybrid picking. To me, in this case, the advantages are clear. In the melody, you get more clarity, more separation of the melody and other parts, and Tommy manages to flesh out the harmony in several sections of the song. But there are some drawbacks too. You have to push the bass notes around quite a bit in terms of timing, and of course you have to be comfortable with a pick or plectrum. It's an educated guess, but I can imagine electric guitar players preferring this version, while classical guitar players will be more at home in Clive Carroll's version. I'm curious to see which one you are going to pick. You might also notice a rare wardrobe change in this video. I have two really young kids, and that is probably all you want to know about that change of clothes. Let's dive straight in. Okay, straight to playing, and the guitar is in standard tuning. As was the case with Clive Carroll's version, Tommy likes to play this song on an acoustic that is tuned down half a step or a full step. Now, just to make it easy for you so that you don't have to retune every time you want to do a section of the lesson, I'm sticking to standard tuning. Now, Tommy does leave a lot more room in his arrangement than Clive Carroll does, so you do benefit from that lower tuning. So once you have it in the fingers, try grabbing a guitar that is tuned down, and you will immediately notice how those long bass notes really fill up the whole sound a bit more with that lower tuning. That being said, I'm using, of course, a flat pick, because this lesson is going to be almost exclusively on how you can change an arrangement when you switch over to hybrid picking. Clive Carroll's version uses standard finger picking, long fingernails. I did it without long fingernails, and Tommy uses a flat pick. That being said, let's dive straight into the first verse. Here we go. All of that is pretty familiar stuff if you already learned Clive Carroll version. No surprise, because his version was based on what Tommy played. Now, the few changes here, the few really new chord shapes are quite tricky. We start out by playing those two open E strings, and now we're just playing that first hammer-on all by itself without the low E string bass note at the same time. So you have 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, and then you add the bass note with the pick. So the first sixth interval is played with the pick and the middle finger, then low E string, and then most of the rest of the bar is always pick and middle finger. And then everything else is pick on the high E string and always pick and middle finger for the hybrid picked sections. So always either the single notes are played with the pick and the double stops are played with the pick and the middle finger. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. The first time now that we're going to use the ring finger, we drop down to the E triad. We're going to play pick on the D string, middle finger on the G string, ring finger on the B string. And now Tommy moves over to that E augmented chord, shifting up the index finger, but he is adding the G sharp at the same time with the thumb over the side of the neck. This can hurt if you have smaller hands. So what he does is he leaves those 3 strings ringing out, and then he plays the pick on the low E string, the middle finger on the G string, and the ring finger on the B string. Basically, you just let that ring finger on the D string, you let that note just ring out. It fits within the rest of the chord. So plucking the E triad, adding the thumb and moving up the index finger, and you just let the D string sustain. If you like the sound of that G sharp underneath being added straight away, but you are struggling with the thumb, it is possible to play it without the thumb too, and then you're going for this voicing using the pinky, or this fingering, sorry, and then as you move up, you can add the index finger on the low bass note. It's a bit trickier to get this right coming from that higher section. And if that doesn't work, then just go for Clive Carroll's version. Then we move over to the A chord, just an open E string, and we let this sustain for almost 2 full beats, then an open E string. And now Mr. Carroll is always hammering on 6th intervals. Tommy is not going for this, he is going for full triads. So he's playing a small bar across 2 strings, then the middle finger on the 6th fret, so 6th fret, 5th fret, 5th fret, and he's hammering on a full bar to the 7th fret. So Clive Carroll played 2 separate strings. We're going to play 3 strings, hammering on, sliding up, all the same techniques as in Clive Carroll's version. And we're going to pick this each time with the pick, middle finger and ring finger. So picking the triad and hammering on. And this time we're not going to do the slide up and down yet, it's just hammering on and adding the bass note with the pick. 1, 2, back to the triad, again picking always with the pick, middle finger and ring finger. We just let that 1 bass note sustain throughout the next 2 bars, and then we pluck the full C sharp minor chord shape and then to the A minor 6th chord shape. Always pick, middle finger, ring finger. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. All the way at the end, we keep that chord shape down, open E string, index finger 2nd fret, and then hammering on with the pinky to the 4th fret as you shift the ring finger down to the 4th fret again. That delaying tactic of the bass note, so basically playing the chord on the beat and pushing the bass note behind or after the first beat, that is what you're going to see throughout the whole arrangement now. Those first 4 bars back to back. And as you perform that hammer on, 1, just that B bass note, it's not even a bass note, it's so high up, but it leaves just that short break, that open space in the arrangement. I think it sounds great. And everything else is big, so you play the run up. 1, 2, 3. So hammering on to the 4th fret, playing the bass note and then sliding up and down on the high E string. To the 2nd fret again, I still haven't let go of that, and then to an open string. Same C sharp minor 9th chord we played in the Clive Carroll version 2. And now Tommy adds a melody note when he performs that embellishment down from the 3rd fret to the 2nd fret, he re-picks the 4th fret on the G string. 1, 2, 3, again, pick and middle finger. And now I have the habit of picking that last hammer on with the middle finger and the ring finger so that I can reach for the bass note. I'm quite sure that Tommy is also playing this with the pick and the middle finger. That is probably what Tommy would do. I don't know why, but my hands always just default to middle finger, ring finger, so I can play the next bass note. We're now in the F sharp dominant chord. And just bass note and 2 strums. So 1, 2, 3. And Tommy lets go of everything when he initiates that single note lick, sliding up to the 4th fret with the ring finger and then index finger 2nd fret on the high E string. So just that bar on the F sharp chord. 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And now we're moving into probably the most difficult section of the whole Tommy Emmanuel version. He's going to pull the same trick as in Amazing Grace, moving from B sus4 to B dominant by fretting again those 2 bass strings at the same time with the middle finger. 2nd fret on the low E string, 2nd fret on the A string. We're starting out by playing the 2nd fret on the A string together with the pinky on the 3rd fret on the B string, sliding down to the 2nd fret and then pulling off to an open string. And now the tricky stuff. He's going to move from a B sus4 chord, and he does that with an F sharp in the bass, fretting those 2 bass notes again with just the middle finger. So you have 2nd fret low E string, middle finger, 2nd fret A string, also with the middle finger, 2nd fret with the index finger on the D string, and in a second you're going to slide that down to the 1st fret. So you get... I find it almost impossible to play that clean, and I can't even manage to put the rest of the lick in front and behind it. The only way that I found that works for me to play this section is to use the thumb over 2 strings all the way down below. And I know normally we make a habit of removing the thumb over the side of the neck, but this is really the only way that I can find, is that you play that first slide down with the thumb over the E string and the A string. The slide going down and then E string, A string, G string and D string at the same time. Index finger, middle finger, 2nd fret, and sliding the index finger down to the 1st fret. And then open B string, hammering onto the 2nd fret, and an open E string. And that is the full lick. Now, this is pretty crazy stuff in what is otherwise quite an easy song to play if you compare it to other songs of Tommy's standard. So one more time, the full lick. 1, 2, 3, and back to the 1st beat all the way on the 7th fret. This is really, really, really tricky to play. So either you just go for Clive Carroll's version, which was a lot easier, or you just leave out that F sharp bass note. Then it becomes a lot easier to play as well. Then you get this. 1, 2, 3, and back to the 7th fret. So that is easier to play, just leaving out that F sharp down below. Then you get this, again, performing the slide, basically leaving a small gap there, and then on the 2nd beat, A string, D string and G string, again sliding down the index finger, open B string, hammering on the pinky to the high E string. 1, 2, 3, 1. That could be a solution as well, or maybe just pump that bass note 2 times if you really want to keep that straight triplet feel going. 1, 2, 3, 1. So all I did was play that B bass note 2 times in a row, and then you get that constant triplet feel if you're aiming for that. Again, this is Tommy's most difficult variation in the whole tune. Feel free to make it a little bit easier or just switch over to what Clive Carroll plays in this part. But anyway, those were the first 8 bars. Sorry, let me play the last 4 bars one more time and then connect everything. And straight into the next part. Now the first 8 bars, all with hybrid picking. Straight into the next 4 bars, few changes here. The only change is we're pumping that low E bass string in between the first and second melody note. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Everything else is the exact same thing, just 2 extra bass notes, and Tommy often mutes these, giving the timing or the momentum of the song a little extra push. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Whatever chord shape you played before with the index finger, just aim for that the exact same way. We move up to the E augmented chord, and then we play bass note, D string, and a short snap on the G string and B string. So leaving you with a small gap again to perform that same hammer on to the 7th fret. Let me count along one more time. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Hammering on to the 7th fret and then putting down the bass note on the first beat this time. So the hammer on now is in front of the first beat. 1, 2, 3, 1. See, so the hammer on and then the bass note on the first beat. You have to let that bar sustain because now we are going to do the slide up and down with a full bar. Again, Clive Carroll did this with 2 strings in 6th intervals, now full block triads with the slide up and down to the 8th fret. So 2, 3, 1, 2. Hammering on, bass note, sliding up and down, and on the second beat, going back to the A triad. 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. Everything else is the same thing, but again, we're placing a few extra bass notes in there, all with the pick. 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So on the second half of the second beat, you play an open A bass string. 1, 2, 3, 1. And on the first beat again, 2 strums. And into the same melody, this is all picked with the plectrum, 5th fret, 3rd fret, and then hybrid picking. Plectrum and middle finger pick on the low E string, middle finger on the G string. And the last section isn't that different from Clive's version either. Those 4 bars, one more time. One thing to mention, Tommy almost never puts down that middle finger. Clive Carroll always plays that full A minor 6th chord. Tommy does not put that middle finger down on the 4th fret, but he also never plays the D string. So if you want to leave that finger out, it's perfectly possible. Just make sure that you don't play that open D string in the process. Then the last 4 bars. This is actually easier to play, so hybrid picking low E string with the G string, pick to the high E string, move the bass note over, then pick on the A string, pick on the G string, and a quick hammer on from the 2nd fret on the B string to an open B string, moving into the F sharp chord again. Clive Carroll plays triplets here. We're moving mostly in 8th notes. So 1, 2, 3, 1 to the F sharp chord, mostly the same thing again. 1, 2, 3, small double stop. I think that is different. So you move up to the B chord, you play the D string and G string at the same time, pull off to an open G string, and then Tommy picks again the G string and D string at the same time while holding down the full E chord. So from the F sharp chord, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, and then strum 2, 3, 1 up to the B chord, 1, 2, 3, 1. So the B chord running up, D string, and then the full chord with the pinky on top. Remove the pinky. For 2 open E strings, use those open E strings to move back up to the 7th fret for the first melody note again. So and into verse number 2. Those last 4 bars. Verse 2 coming up. Before we head there, those last 8 bars, one more time. And now, before we head into verse 2, let me slap on the magnet for a good look at the picking hand and play it through verse 1 one more time. Straight into verse number 2. The good news is most of the variations in the next verses are the exact same thing. So once you can play verse 1, you can basically play the whole of Tommy's arrangement when it comes to the verse. So the only thing we have left to look at is the bridge and the ending. The bridge, again, is more or less the same than Clive Carroll's version, but the ending is something completely different. But we'll check that out in the next part of the tutorial. I'll see you there.